have a great class.
Welcome everybody on this Monday afternoon. I hope you're all here to learn how to knit cables. Darren is your teacher there on screen. He's been showing off some of the swatches he's been working on. My name's Claire. I'll be hanging out in the chat here, answering any questions you have there or forwarding them on to Darren. I'll also put the handout in there in case you need that again. So if you do have questions during the course of the class, please use the Zoom chat and then we'll pass them on to Darren so he can demonstrate anything that's needed. And now that all of that is out of the way, we will finally turn it over to Darren.
All right, welcome to class, everyone. So today, as we've heard, we're going to learn how to do cables. Cables are actually quite easy to do once you've learned how. So don't be intimidated if you've never done cables before. This is going to be a really exciting class. That'll show you some great things that we can do with cables. So let's jump right in and go ahead and switch to the view of my hands and we'll start demonstrating. Out of the way. All right, so just a little bit about cables to start with. This is what cables, one style of cable, what it can look like. And here is another style of cables we're going to review today. But mainly what a cable looks like, it is a, this is the very most basic kind of cable. It's just a twist. The stitches are actually knitted out of order. So we take them off our needle and hold them on another needle, and then we knit them out of order, and it creates this like little twisting action that goes on, and it can actually be very pretty and very nice in a pattern. You can do all types of different kinds of cables and make all kinds of different kinds of patterns just by following the same simple steps that I'm going to show you today. You don't need a lot of special tools when you're working for cables. All you need is a cable needle. And here are a couple options of cable needles that you can get. There's this one that's kind of shaped like a U or shaped like a J. There's this one that's straight, but it has notches cut into it to kind of keep the stitches from slipping. There's one, I don't have it with me now, but there's one that's a straight needle like this, except then it has kind of like a little dip in the middle, like a little U shape in the middle, and then you let your stitches rest in that little shape. But I couldn't find my needle like that today. And you can just use a double pointed needle. If you don't have a cable needle, like sometimes you might want to try something new, but you don't want to go out and buy a bunch of new supplies. You can just use a double pointed needle. You can use a chopstick. You could use the pencil just to kind of get you started. And then once you've had a chance to practice, then you can try the different types of cable needles that are available. So you really don't need any kind of extra supplies or anything that's expensive. So any questions about all the cable needles? You want a cable needle that is either the same size as the needle that you're working with or just a little bit smaller, because the stitches will be on the cable needle. And if the cable needle is larger than your knitting needle, then it'll stretch your stitches. So you do not want that to happen. So whatever size knitting needle you're working with, you want your cable needle to be either the same size or maybe just a little smaller so that you don't stretch out your stitches. Okay. So that's pretty much all the information about the cable needles that we need. So any questions before we get started with actual knitting? Any questions at all? So before you start with cables, you should know how to knit, purl, and cast on and bind off pretty well. It's very important that you can recognize a knit and a purl stitch and be able to work them in a pattern without supervision. So that's just some of the basics, because it is important to be able to do your knits and purls without getting them mixed up. So I don't know if you have your handout or not, but the first little exercise we're going to do is this one right here. We're going to start out by casting on 18 stitches. We're going to purl 2, knit 6, purl 2, knit 6, purl 2. And then we're going to work the next row just in reverse. We're going to knit the knits and purl the purls as we come to them. And then the excitement will start in row 3. So that's where all the excitement happens. So let me just jump right in and show you how to do the cable. So I'm actually on row 3. I did this one a little earlier to get a head start. I've knitted row 1 and row 2 already. So I'm ready to start row 3, and we're going to see what this cabling business is all about. So I'm going to purling 2, normal purls. And now what it's telling me is I have a 3/3 RC. So that is my next set of instructions, 3/3 RC. And what that is telling me is I'm going to have 3 stitches crossing over 3 stitches, and I'm going to end up with a right leaning cable. So 3/3 right leaning cable. That's what that means. And I'm going to show you how to achieve that. So you can either have a right leaning cable or a left leaning cable. So I did my purl 2. I'm going to slip 3 stitches on to my cable needle. And I want this to lean to the right. So to create a right leaning cable, I'm going to put my stitches on my cable needle in the back. And a little memory crutch on how to remember if you want them in the back or the front is you can say to yourself, I'll be right back. And if you'll be right back, then your stitches are in the back and they're going to end up leaning to the right. So I'll be right back. Go ahead and do my 3. So knit 3 stitches from your left hand needle, just like normal. I am knitting with my tail. Do not knit with your tail. It's not part of it. So knit 3 stitches just like normal. And then you let your left hand needle kind of rest. Don't let any stitches drop. And then you're going to knit from your cable needle. When you pick up your cable needle, though, I want you to double check and make sure that before you start knitting that you're looking at knit stitches. It's very easy to twist the cable needle backwards and have purl stitches looking at you. So just take 1 extra second and make sure that you've not twisted it. You're looking at knit stitches. And then you're just going to knit 3 stitches right from that cable needle. Just like normal knitting. 2 and 3. And now we're done with this, so we can lay that down for a second. And then my next set of instructions tell me to purl 2. Just normal purling, just like a normal. All right, now I'm coming up to my next cable. Let's look at the instructions for the next one. So I'm still on row 3. So I did my purl 2. I'm going to do 3/3 LC. So what I'm doing is 3 stitches crossing over 3 stitches, and it's going to create a left leaning cable. So this one's going to lean in the opposite direction. So let's talk about how to do that. So I'm going to take my 3 stitches and just slip them right onto my cable needle, being careful not to twist them. Now, when I wanted them to lean to the right, I held them to the back because I'll be right back. Putting them in the back forces them to lean to the right. But if I want them to lean to the left, I'm going to bring them to the front. And the memory crutch for that one is I left the front door open. So if you left the front door open, you're going to bring them to the front, and then they're going to lean to the left. So let's see how that looks. So I'm going to knit 3 stitches from my regular working needle, my left-hand needle, so just normal knitting, nothing special. And now I'm going to knit 3 stitches from my cable needle. And again, you want to make sure sometimes, it's easy to twist them. If you twist it and you're looking at purl stitches, then that's incorrect. So you want to take 1 second and make sure that you're actually looking at knit stitches, that you did not twist it. And then just knit from your cable needle, just like normal, 3 stitches from the cable needle. And then you're done. You're done with that cable. Lay down your cable needle and purl 2. And you finish that whole row. And now let's look at how beautiful it is. We've made this beautiful cable. We're so excited to see it. And what is it going to look like? And that looks like a hot mess, right? That doesn't look good. That can't be right. Is that right? Is that what it's supposed to look like? Well, unfortunately, the first row of a cable always looks a little questionable. It always looks like maybe something didn't quite go right, or maybe something's wrong. But that's normal. By the time you knit a couple of rows and then cross it again, that's when your cable will actually start to take shape. So if you knit your first row and you're very excited to see how nice it looks, and it looks like this, don't lose heart, because that's kind of the way it looks, and it will take shape after you do a couple of more rows. So that's normal. Do not panic. All right. So I'm going to demonstrate all of this again, but in the meantime, I'm ready to accept any questions that you have. Any questions out there?
Well, our first question was, can you demonstrate that again?
Yes, I can, and I will.
We also had a good point from Belinda, who says that in some patterns, she's seen it written as 6 and the letters CB or CF for cable back or cable front. And that's...
Go ahead.
It just depends on the abbreviation that the particular designer has decided to use. They could use, the 3/3 LC for left cable or left cross, they might call it. Or they could say, cable back CB, but the action of making the cable is going to be the same. And then hopefully in the pattern, there is a guide to the abbreviation to tell you what they're trying to get you to do in that section.
Yeah, so the moral of that story would be, before you start knitting, to just read through the pattern, look at all the abbreviations, make sure you can find a key or a chart, like to tell you what you're supposed to do for each one, and read through it and make sure, because like Claire said, any designer, they could make up anything they want and put it in there. So I don't think I've seen that before, but yeah, there's opportunity to see almost anything in a pattern. So this is what I just knitted while you were watching. And then this is the same thing, only I've gone ahead and I've progressed a little bit more. So with this second swatch, I've knitted clear up to row 9, which is the next time I'm going to do a cable cross. So let's look at this pattern for just a minute and see what we're going to see. So row 1 and row 2 are just normal knitting, knits and purls just like normal. Row 3 is where the excitement happens, and we have this new cable stitch, this new abbreviation, which we talked about. Row 4 and all wrong side rows, you'll just knit the knits and purl the purls. So you're just going to look at them and knit them as established. Row 5, you're basically just knitting the knits and purling the purls again. There's no row 6 because it's included in row 4's instructions with all the even number rows. Row 7 is the same as row 5. You're just knitting the knits and purling the purls, all very easy. Row 8, you're just repeating row 4, which is still just knitting the knits and purling the purls. And not until you get to row 9 is there anything else that's different or unusual. So what I want you to realize is, just because cables look very complicated and they seem very hard, there's not a lot going on that's new for you. The only time you're doing anything new in this pattern would be row 3 and row 9. The rest of it, you're just knitting your knits and purling your pearls just like you normally know how to do. So you don't have to feel intimidated by it. So one of the hardest things about knitting cables for me is keeping track of what row I'm on and making sure that I'm knitting the cable in the right row. You don't want to knit one sooner and then knit the next one later, because they do look different if you don't have the exact same numbers of rows in between them. So what I did on this one to help you, I put a stitch marker. So I knitted my cable, I did my cable cross, I did a stitch marker, and then every row, every time I did a row, I put a stitch marker to keep track. So this was row 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and now I'm ready to start row 9. And if I put this down and come back tomorrow or something to finish, then I can count and easily see exactly what row that I'm on. Now you could just put like little tick marks on a piece of paper. You can use a row counter. You can use anything you want to use. You don't have to use anything. You can just go back and kind of count your rows here, but sometimes it's hard to tell, is that where it crossed or is it here? Was it here or here? So however you want to try to keep track of your rows, but that's one of the things when I'm knitting cables that I tend to like sometimes lose track of what row I'm on, and it really does make a big difference. So all that being said, let's go ahead. I'm going to do the next cable cross, which is exactly like the first one. So I'm going to purl 2. I'm going to do a 3/3 RC, and that stands for 3 stitches crossing over 3 stitches, leaning to the right. So I'm going to do my first purl 2. Take my cable needle. Now, when you're slipping stitches onto your cable needle, you want to enter the stitch as if you were purling it. So you want to slip the stitch right on that needle and make sure that you're not twisting it as you're slipping it. So enter it as if to purl and just bring it right across. So I've got my 3 stitches. I'm going to put them on so they don't fall off. Now this one is supposed to lean to the right. So I'm going to put this to the back. I'll be right back. Put it into the back. Get your working yarn in the correct position. Now I'm going to knit 3 stitches off of my left hand needle. So knit 3 stitches, or whatever pattern you're doing, it might be different. And now I'm going to knit from my cable needle. Looking here, making sure I'm looking at knit stitches. You don't want to make a mistake. And then just normal knitting. I'm just knitting from a different needle. And then we'll look at how it is. So you can see this cable is leaning, it's kind of curving to the right. And I'm going to do 2 purls. And then I'm going to do a 3/3 LC. So that's 3 stitches over 3 stitches leaning to the left. So slip your stitches as if to purl so you don't twist them. And because they're leaning to the left, you can say, I left the front door open. So if you want them to go to the left, you're going to bring them to the front. Get your working yarn in the right position for doing knits. I'm going to knit 3 stitches. And then knit from the cable needle. Make sure that you're looking at knit stitches. See how easy it would be to turn that and knit from the wrong place? Like that's looking at purls. So you just want to make sure you're not twisting it. You're looking at nice row of knits. And then you're just going to knit like normal, nothing special. You're just knitting from a different needle. Just these 3 stitches. And I'll finish with my purl 2. And now let's look at it and see. Now that we've done more than one cross, it actually does start to look nice and start to look like something. So you can see how it's crossing here and then going under, and this one's coming out from under and it's going over. So it looks like a spiral, like a twist. And that's really all that is to making cables. It's really quite easy after you've practiced a little bit. So what questions do we have? Exciting, you don't like it, you like it? Any comments?
We do have at least one student who has successfully done a cable, so congratulations. We do have a request to see it again, but I think we're going to demonstrate a few other types of cables, but they're all using the same basic process, so we can watch that.
Okay. All right, so we ready to move to the next one then? Is that what I'm hearing? All right, so the next thing I want to show you. So cables are, no matter what type of cable you're doing, or no matter what, how complicated they look, they're pretty much all done the same way. You're always going to be taking your stitches off of the your needles, and you're going to be putting them on a cable needle, and you're going to be crossing them over. It's pretty much all done the same way. You're either holding them in the front or in the back. But if you do them in different orders, and if you do them with different numbers of stitches, they do create many, many different looks. So this this little pattern here that we're looking at, this one, to me, it almost looks like horseshoes coming out of each other. These are done the exact same way that I just did the other cable, but they're just done in a different order. So, and the information is presented to us in a different way. So what we're looking at here is a cable chart. Now this one it's a little bit different, so I'm going to explain how to use it. You're going to see that there are numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So we're going to start right here where number 1 is. Whenever you're working on a chart like this, you're always looking at the front of the chart, which symbolizes what the front of your work will look like. So there are 3 boxes. Each one of these boxes represent a stitch, and the first 3 have an asterisk in them. So if we go down here to our key and we look for the asterisk, we're going to purl on the right side and knit on the wrong side. So that sounds easy. And if it's just an empty square, an empty rectangle, just like this one, we're going to knit on the right side and purl on the wrong side. So that's pretty easy. I know how to do that. And so we're going to look back, and then when we get to here, that looks a little questionable, right? That's kind of funny looking. Let's see what that means. So that is, so if they're leaning that direction here, 3/3 RC. Well, that sounds like something we just did, right? 3/3 RC. So that must be 3 stitches over 3 stitches leaning to the right. And this one is 3 stitches leaning, 3 stitches over 3 stitches leaning to the left. So we know how to do that. And then there are 10 rows. So 10 rows. And in these 10 rows, we only have to do our cable cross 1 time. And then you just keep repeating these same 10 rows over and over again, but you only have to do anything special or unusual just 1 time in those 10 rows. So it's really, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. You're really getting a lot of excitement and a lot of impact, but you're not really having to do a lot of extra work. So this is the swatch that I was working on. and I wanted you to see how it looks when you continue. So this is my 10 rows right here. And then the next one. And then the only time I'm doing anything interesting is right here. And the rest of it is just knitting and purling, just like you already know how to do. So it's pretty exciting. So let's go ahead and look and see. And one thing I like to do, because I'm very, I don't know how you are, but I'm very easily distracted. And so anything for me to help me focus on where I'm supposed to be working is always beneficial. So I like to use these Post-it notes to block out everything I'm not looking at. So the only thing I need to look at right here is row 3. So I'm going to use these Post-it notes to block out everything else, and that way I'm not distracted or overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed and distracted very easily. So the first 3 stitches are purls. So purl, purl, and purl. And then I have my 3/3 RC, my 3/3 LC. So there's nothing in the middle. So I'm just going to go one to the next and then end with 3 purls. So let's see what that looks like. So 3 purls. Purls. And then 3/3 RC. So I'm going to slip 3 stitches, being careful not to twist them, onto my cable needle. And if I want it to go to the right, I'm going to put it in the back. I'll be right back. And now I'm going to knit 3 stitches from my left-hand needle. Now I'm going to knit from my cable needle, being careful not to twist it. And so now I'm going to move right into my next one, which is 3/3 LC. So it's leaning to the left. So I'm going to put 3 stitches on my cable needle. It's going to lean to the left. So I'm going to hold it in the front. I left the front door open. Put your yarn in the right position for knitting. I'm going to knit 3 stitches. 2, just normal knitting, nothing special. And I'm going to knit from my cable needle. My 3 stitches. Finish with my 3 purls. Let's look. So you can see it kind of creates this group of stitches. It looks like they're coming out of the center of that horseshoe, and then they are going to continue then up this way. So we're going to continue with this horseshoe pattern, but you can see we're doing the exact same thing we did before with our 3/3 LC or RC. The only difference is we're doing them right next to each other. We don't have any type of purls in between them. So when I was doing this one, I get these 2 separate kind of twisting braids because I have this row of purls in between. But you can see if I got rid of those purls, it kind of then creates a different look, which is really exciting, I think. You kind of create this look just by doing the same thing, just in a different order. So do we have any questions? I'm happy to answer some questions now if there are.
We have a couple people saying they also use Post-it notes or they're going to start keeping them in their knitting bags.
Yes, absolutely. I love a Post-it note.
And yes, it is very nice to have both the chart and the written directions. So you can use whichever one works best for you.
And sometimes if you have both, it's nice because you can, like, if one of them doesn't seem to make sense or is confusing, you can kind of compare them. Sometimes you can figure out what they're trying to tell you if you read both of them. Any questions? I can't believe there aren't more questions. No, no questions. It's amazing. All right, so we can move on to this next.
Before we move on,
okay,
we have a request to see the horseshoe cable and the first cable next to each other so we can see the difference again.
and then this is one where I have this one ready to do the next cross. So you can kind of see here. We want to look at this one. Look at this one. See, when they're squished together, though, it looks pretty much the same. But if you let it open up to show those pearls, to me, when I look at it, my eye sees two separate kind of twists. But when I look at this, I see, you know, the horseshoe shape going that direction. Okay. Can't believe there are. Usually there's more questions in this, so don't hesitate to ask if there are.
We do have a question. I think you covered real briefly at the beginning of class. Does the cable needle need to be the same size as your knitting needles?
The cable needle should be, it could be the same size as your knitting needle, or it should be maybe a little smaller. The reason being is if your stitches, like if say this was a small needle and I was using a size 6 or something, and if the cable needle was larger, when you put the stitches on a larger needle, it's going to stretch those stitches out. And when you knit them then with the smaller needle that you're actually working with, then it's going to look, your gauge is going to be off. So what you want is a cable needle that is a little bit smaller than your working needle, or it could be the same size. Do you think it's okay if it's the same size, Claire? Or I usually make it smaller.
I like to have it be at least a little bit smaller because then it's easier to slip the stitches and then to knit them off of the cable needle.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. So I usually have mine. You wouldn't want it like a whole bunch smaller though, probably, but usually it's just a little smaller. Like see, like this is just a little smaller than that one. Although I could use this one, it wouldn't bother me, and that's a lot smaller. Anything else?
I just want to remind people, if you do have a question, go ahead and put it in the Zoom chat. And then if it's, somewhat unrelated, I can answer it directly or we'll forward it to Darren to answer there.
Okay. All right, well, we can move on to the next one. Now the next one is really cute. And it is a honeycomb shape. And so this is what the picture of it looks like. Now this chart right here that we're looking at, it has the, we have just this chart, and then we have this big picture here. So this chart does not make this whole big picture. This chart really only makes this much of this swatch. And then to get this big swatch, to make this honeycomb, you just have to keep repeating that chart over and over and over again. So it's a little misleading when you just look at that. So if you want to make something like this, you wouldn't just cast on like 12 stitches, you would need to cast on, maybe, 16 or your repeat is, the stitch repeat is 8 stitches. So right here, your stitch repeat is 8 stitches. So you could cast on like 24 or 32 to make a larger stitch repeat to show up. And then it has these 2 extra stitches on the edge, which create a border. So sometimes you'll see it in a pattern like cast on multiples of 8 plus 4. So what that would be telling you, you could cast on multiples of 8. So any multiple of 8, 8, 16, 24, 32, and so on. And then 4 stitches for your edging. So that's how you would work something like this, because you wouldn't want to just have like one little, basically it's just this like part right here. So that's how you would read that. And then this one is written the same way. We've got our chart. You start right here where the 1 is. You go across, up, back across, up. So you kind of go zigzag. And this one, you're only doing a cable cross. You do your cable cross, and then you have 1, 2, 3, and then you're doing another cable cross. So this one, you're doing it every 4 rows. So sometimes you'll do them sooner, and sometimes you'll do them more spaced out, depending on the pattern. And so this one, this kind of shaded one, is knit on the right side and purl on the wrong side. And the one with the line in it is purl on the right side, knit on the wrong side. Excuse me. And then this one, these 2 lines are going that direction, but this long line is going to the right. So this is confusing to me. I feel like because these 2 little lines, meaning we have 2 stitches crossing over 2 stitches, and they're leaning to the left, I feel like this should be a left-leaning cable. But no, because this big line in the middle is leaning to the right, they are calling this a 4-stitch right cable. So they're writing it out just a little bit different. They're not doing 2/2, which is how we saw it written in the other pattern. This one is a 4-stitch right cable. So it's written out a little bit different. And then this chart, this little symbol is a little bit different. And it's kind of confusing to me. And then this one, these are leaning to the right, but this one's leaning to the left. So it's a 4-stitch left cable. So what I did here on my chart, because this one is leaning to the left or the right, it's very confusing. I put a B, so that way I know to hold my work in the back. And here I put an F. So that means I know to hold my work in the front, because I found that very confusing. So whatever is going to mean to you to make it make sense, sometimes it's nice to go ahead and write some notes on your chart if you want to, okay? Any questions about the symbols or the chart or why it's written the way it's written? Questions? So each time you do a cable, if it's written by a different designer, they might have it written out, or the diagram might be done in a different way. So just always kind of just review that. And so I have, because I do things my own way, I did 3 stitches on each end instead of 2. So I'm going to do, and I'm doing garter stitch on my edge instead of purls. Again, I like to do things my own way. And so I have 2 over 2, and I'm going to hold it in the back. So I'm going to slip these 2 off, just like we've been doing. Hold it in the back. And then I'm going to knit 2. Then I'm going to knit these off of my cable needle. Just like we've been doing. And I'm going to jump right into the next one, which is 2/2, 2/2, holding it in the front. So I'm going to, being careful not to twist them, that's very important. Hold them in the front. Knit 2 stitches. Then knit 2 stitches from my cable needle. All right. So if you look, you can kind of see how it's starting then to move. This one is coming out and moving to the left. This one is coming out and moving to the right. And once they get stacked up on top of each other, they kind of create this honeycomb look. Now I finished my chart, right? I did my 8 stitches, but I'm repeating them, so I have to continue on. So I'm going to take 2 stitches off, hold them in the back, knit 2 stitches, and then I'm going to knit 2 stitches from my cable needle. So as you can see, like I'm not doing anything new or different than the very first thing that I showed you. I'm just doing a different number of stitches and I'm doing them in a different order, and it's creating a new look. But I'm still basically doing the exact same thing with taking stitches off, holding them on the cable needle, and then putting them back on and knitting them. But it creates all these different looks that are very exciting.
We did have a question, Darren, and maybe you can show it if you still have another cable, about how you position the yarn when you have that cable needle in the way to make sure your working yarn isn't getting tangled up on the cable needle.
That is a problem. So you do have to kind of practice with that. So I'm going to slip these 2 stitches off, hold them in the back, and then just make sure you wouldn't want your working yarn in front of those 2 stitches, or else you'd end up getting this bar. I mean, in a different design, that might actually be decorative. You could actually maybe use that as a decorative feature, but normally you don't want to see that. So you want to make sure you're putting your yarn behind so that it's not going to show up on the front of your work. And enter that stitch to do a knit stitch. And just make sure that your yarn is positioned in the right place to knit. Hopefully this is answering the question. Show you the next one. And then you're going to knit these 2. So you do want to take a second and look and see where your yarn is before you start knitting, just to make sure you have it in the right position. I'm going to take these 2 off and hold them in the front.
Question, Darren, which row of the chart are you working from?
This one, I was on row 5 because I already did, I was working up. So. Let me look and see what I'm doing. I think I made a mistake. So while I'm looking at this, are there any questions? Any other questions?
We did have a question that was more about chart reading than cables per se. I did answer it in the chat if anyone needs to take a peek there.
Okay. What was the question? Want me to go over it?
How do you read the chart from right to left and then left to right, or are you always reading in the same direction?
Okay, yeah, you want to read it. Well, that comes into other questions. If you are knitting flat, like we're knitting flat right now, you go across and the numbers will tell you. So you go across and then you go up and then you go back. So you're reading as a zigzag. Now, if you were knitting in the round, you would go here and then you would come around and come back to here. But then the numbers would all be on, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The numbers would all be on the same side if you're knitting in the round. So if you look at the number placement, that will guide to where you are supposed to be knitting. If you're supposed to be knitting, in the round or in the flat. Any other questions? Usually there's a lot more questions. I can't believe there aren't more questions.
We have a lot of people actually knitting along with us, so their hands are too busy to type.
Okay, well that's good then too.
We did have someone mention that their cable stitches were a little bit tight, and then the first stitch after the cable was a little bit looser. I know that's something that happens to me sometimes. Just depends on like the thickness of the yarn and my needles and all of that. My suggestion for that was that you could sort of use the tip of your needle or your fingers and take a little bit of yarn from that loose stitch and scooch it over into the stitches that are too tight. Sort of like if you've ever fixed a snag on a sweater, like a store-bought or a hand knit sweater, it's the same idea.
Yeah. Yeah, so sometimes you'll also get a little hole in your work. It's kind of part of cabling where you get this little hole where you do the cross. Sometimes people really don't like that, and sometimes, like, I don't even notice it. It doesn't bother me. But if you pull it just a little bit tighter when you do your cable cross, sometimes that'll close that up a little bit. But I think your tension kind of works itself out on its own as you're practicing. Don't you find that to be the case, Claire? Like after you get more comfortable with it?
Yeah, and especially if you're feeling that your stitches are very tight right now, remember that you're learning a new thing and you're probably a little bit nervous on it. So you're sort of clenching up and getting really tight and anxious. But once you get practiced, that should loosen. And of course, blocking will fix everything.
Blocking is great, right? All right, so no questions about this, right? I can't believe this. I can't believe there are no questions. All right, so I'm going to do something I've never done before when I taught this class. I'm going to actually move towards the last one, which I've never made it this far. I've been teaching this class for 8 years, and we've never made it to the last page. I don't think so. And I have this swatch, but I don't even have it on a needle because I was just going to show it. I wasn't planning on having to work on it because we don't usually get this far. But this one is called Hugs and Kisses. And this one it's very similar to the honeycomb pattern, but you're creating circles and then you're creating X's. So I don't know if you can kind of see, like that is the X, which I think is a kiss. And then the circle, is the circle a hug or is the X a hug? I'm never sure. But you create these hugs and kisses with making cables. And it's very, very similar to the honeycomb pattern, except by adding this row of pearls in the middle, you end up separating them. So that way they don't fit together and form a honeycomb. They are able to stand out and stand alone as individual columns. So this column and this column end up not being pushed together. They can create two separate columns. And also, the order here is a little bit different. So for this, creating this one, you're doing the back and the back and the front and the front. Whereas when we did the honeycomb, it was reversing them. So after you've practiced the honeycomb one, then this one would be the next logical one to go to, and it creates this really cute hugs and kisses pattern. And again, you'll be following the numbers. You go with 1, 2, 3, 4. So you read it this direction, kind of a zigzag. You're only doing your cable 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So really like every 4 rows, you're doing your cable cross. When I first learned cables, I taught myself cables. And I was under the impression that it was going to be very hard and very complicated, and you would have to do a lot. And for some reason, I had it in my crazy brain that you'd have to do your cable cross on every row. And so that's what I was trying to do when I first started. And trust me, it's not a good idea. It was really a complete mess. I don't know what I was thinking, but I didn't have anyone to teach me. I was just trying to figure it out. And then once I figured out that you only have to do it like every 5 or 6, sometimes every 10 rows, every 4 rows, whatever, you come to realize that knitting cables, it's you get all this excitement, but you're really only doing a little bit extra work, every now and again. So that's the secret. So other knitters, you can tell other knitters how if you make like a cabled hat and people are all excited and impressed and oh my gosh, that looks so complicated. If they're knitters, then you can take them aside and say, yeah, it's really not so hard. Let me tell you how to do it. But if they're not knitters, then you're like, oh my gosh, it's so hard. It took me hours. It's very complex. I had to use 2 computers and an iPad. And yeah, but it's really not very hard. Any questions at all? Because now we're at the end of class. I've never ended a class 6 minutes early before. This is amazing. What's going on, Claire? What's happening?
We did have a question on the honeycomb pattern on the written pattern because it looks like some rows are missing from it, but I think they're secretly buried in there along with other rows.
Probably. Let's look at it. So we have row 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8. That's not how numbers line up, is it usually? So if we read it carefully, so row 1, row 2, rows 3 and 7. See, I hate it when they do that because it's kind of confusing to me too. So rows 3 and 7. When you read row 2 carefully, so row 2 and all wrong side rows. So all wrong side rows, that would also include row 4 and row 6. And so if you come across something like this though, and it's going to throw you off and it's going to make it so that you're not going to be able to have fun while you're knitting, I recommend sitting down and typing this out. It's only 8 lines. So you could type this out on your computer in your word processor, put each line in numeric order, go ahead and type out the instructions for each line and then print it out and use that. Because something like this to me gets very confusing as well, because you're looking at it and it doesn't make sense. And then you have to figure out where line 8 is or what happened to line 6. So don't let that be a stumbling block for you. Go ahead and print that out, retype it, including all of the instructions, and then print it out. Wouldn't you say, Claire, what do you think of that?
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. I feel like I know a couple of people who get really crazy and make like spreadsheets to keep track of their patterns, but I am not that detail oriented or technologically competent. So
I've never used a spread. If you really want to ruin my life, make me live by a spreadsheet, because that would really confuse me. I don't think dyslexic people and spreadsheets are very compatible.
I think in the handout, we gave them the stitch pattern for the cruller cable too, or cruller. I don't know if it's pronounced like the donut or not.
Really? Do I have it? Which one is that? Oh, I forgot about, yeah, I've never got this far in this class. This is amazing. This class is like all advanced knitters is what's happening. So yeah, I think the other one, I think I've made it to the hugs and kisses maybe once or twice, but I forgot this one was even here. So this one is a good example of what happens if you don't do your cables, if you don't space them out evenly. So you can see how these are twisted very tight, and then you've got this long lazy twist here, and then it's tight and a long lazy twist. So if you don't do your cables, if you don't space them out evenly, they do look quite a bit different. But if you do it in a design, then it can look very pretty. So, but this is a good example of how it looks if you space them out in a different kind of spacing. The chart would be the same. You start here with 1, 2, and then you will kind of work zigzag it up. You're going to knit on the right side, purl on the wrong side, purl on the wrong side, knit on the right side. I'm sorry, purl on the right side, knit on the wrong side. And then for this one, you're having your, it's 6 stitches. So you're doing a 3 over 3 cross. And it's going to lean to the right. So we're going to put it in the back. So we'll be right back. We're going to put it in the back. Any questions? It's kind of a pretty one. I've never knitted this swatch. I should probably knit this swatch since I finally made it to this page, right?
I feel like this pattern in particular would be easy to sort of get off track and forget where you're twisting, because it's got those 2 twists much closer together and then more rows in between.
Yeah. But again, if you put a stitch marker at the end, like every time you finish a row, you put a stitch marker, and then you can count those stitch markers and you'll know which row you're on. That's what I like to do. Or you can put a tick mark next to it. You did 1, you did 2, you did 3, put like a little check mark next to it. But, I mean, there's lots of ways of keeping track. People have there's apps, people use their phone, there's row counters, all kinds of things. So any other questions? We have 1 minute.
Question probably more on the cruller pattern there, because the cable pattern is so wide, but that pictured swatch has more stitches. And this goes for really all of the cables in this handout. It's just directions for the cable pattern. They aren't meant to be directions for a full finished project or anything.
No. So like you could, there were extra stitches added just so that you could see it. Otherwise, it would be hard to see what it was. So,
and it does say down in the note how many stitches they used for this particular swatch.
Yeah. So, but if you do decide you're going to make a project with cables in it, and you do come up with questions as you're working, feel free to contact me on social media. You can contact me on Instagram or on TikTok, and my screen name is Mr. Woolly Bear, M-I-S-T-E-R, Woolly Bear. Maybe Claire will put that in the chat. If you want to contact me on Facebook, however, just look for my name spelled out just like it really is spelled out. And you can send me a direct message on Facebook to my name, or Instagram and TikTok, Mr. Woolly Bear. And I do try to answer the questions as quickly as possible. I love to be able to help people, to help you continue with your knitting career and keep going with it. If you have any problems or if you get stuck, just let me know and I'll see if I can help you kind of get past it and move forward. So anything else? Any other questions? No? All right, and if you make anything with cables, go ahead and tag me. I'd love to see what you make. It'd be really fun to see different projects that you make. So, all right, so practice and don't, I think this Saturday we're having a lot of fun classes. Isn't this week I Love Yarn Day, Claire? Isn't this Saturday?
It is, yes. We're not doing anything super related to this, but if you want to have a refresher on just how to knit, we have a class on that. And then we have a class on making a cute fall hat that can look like a jack-o'-lantern or a ghost or any other Halloween costume you may need.
We're going to show lots of fun ways of embellishing a fun hat. So yeah, look for us on Saturday and don't forget to practice. So thanks for coming to class.